Do you ever feel like no matter how much you grow, it's still not enough? You read another book, watch another self-improvement video, optimize another habit, but somehow you still feel behind. The world celebrates growth mindset, but what if the very pursuit of constant improvement has quietly turned into a trap? A cycle where every effort to fix yourself subtly reinforces the idea that you are broken. That's the hidden cost of self-improvement. It promises freedom but can become a cage. The truth is, many of us started our self-improvement journeys with the best intentions. Maybe you wanted to be more disciplined, confident, or productive. But somewhere along the way, self-betterment became self-surveillance. You started watching yourself like a project in progress, not a person already worthy of care. Each morning routine, each goal, each journal entry became another silent reminder that who you are right now isn't quite good enough. And that's where the trap begins. Psychologists call this the self-discrepancy theory, the tension between who you are and who you think you should be. It's what drives ambition, but it's also what fuels chronic dissatisfaction. Every time you compare your actual self to your ideal self, your brain lights up the same emotional circuits associated with threat and loss. The message is subtle but powerful. Until I reach that next version of myself, I can't fully relax. And the more you chase that horizon, the further it moves away. Think about it. How often do you finally achieve something you've been striving for only to immediately set a new target? The promotion that's quickly replaced by a new goal. The body transformation that somehow still doesn't feel enough. The productivity system that just leads to a more crowded to-do list. That's the treadmill effect of modern self-optimization, motion without a rival. You end up mistaking growth for peace. What's fascinating is that this pattern doesn't come from laziness or lack of willpower. It comes from a misunderstanding of what growth really means. In neuroscience, the brain's default mode is prediction. It constantly imagines who you could be next, scanning for gaps between your current state and a perceived better one. This process evolved for survival, helping humans adapt and improve. But in today's self-improvement culture, that ancient mechanism is hijacked. The goalposts of enough keep moving because the system rewards dissatisfaction. Every ad, influencer, and motivational slogan whispers the same message. You could be more. The result? Your brain never gets permission to rest. You live in a perpetual not yet. Philosophically, this isn't new. The ancient Stoics warned that the endless pursuit of improvement without inner acceptance leads to a form of spiritual restlessness. Seneca once wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." In modern terms, that means if you're always chasing your next upgrade, you never actually inhabit your current self. You become like software, constantly patching, never complete. And here's the paradox. The more you try to perfect yourself, the less you trust yourself. You begin to outsource your sense of worth to metrics. Followers, income, habits tracked, steps counted, books read. But none of those things can measure peace of mind. Imagine a person polishing a mirror so obsessively that they never stop to see the reflection. That's what happens when improvement replaces presence. You polish endlessly, but never pause to meet yourself as you are. Let's look deeper at why this happens. On a psychological level, self-improvement often starts from pain, feeling not enough, not in control, not lovable unless certain conditions are met. So the mind builds a plan. If I fix these flaws, I'll finally deserve rest. But because that plan is built on self-rejection, it can never deliver real acceptance. It's like trying to build self-love on the foundation of self-doubt. No matter how strong the structure, it collapses under its own contradiction. In behavioral psychology, there's a term called the hedonic treadmill, the tendency to adapt quickly to positive changes, resetting your baseline of happiness. But there's a deeper version of it that applies to identity, the self-concept treadmill. You improve your habits, body, or skills, but your internal sense of inadequacy stays the same. You've upgraded the surface, but the operating system hasn't changed. So what's the solution? Not to abandon growth, but to redefine it. True growth isn't about optimization, it's about integration. It's not about becoming more, but becoming whole. Let's unpack that. When you try to fix yourself, you split into two, the critic and the criticized. One part is trying to improve, the other part is being improved upon. This creates an internal hierarchy where one version of you is constantly judging another. But integration means both voices belong to you, the part that strives and the part that stumbles. The driven self and the tired self, the disciplined and the chaotic. When you can hold both with compassion, growth becomes organic, not forced. This is what humanistic psychologists like Carl Rogers meant when they said, The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. Acceptance doesn't mean complacency, it means stability. You can't rewire a system that's constantly rejecting itself. You can't evolve if you're at war with your own wiring. So how do you shift from self-fixing to self-understanding in practical terms? It begins with awareness, catching the subtle moments when improvement becomes self-attack. For instance, ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to grow, or because I feel inadequate if I don't? That question alone can change everything. You might notice that many positive habits are powered by quiet fear. Meditating not to find peace but to avoid anxiety. Working out not for health but to escape shame. Reading not for curiosity but for self-validation. These behaviors aren't wrong, but the energy behind them determines whether they heal or exhaust you. Here's a simple mental model. Growth from curiosity versus growth from fear. Growth from curiosity feels expansive. It invites exploration, play, and experimentation. Growth from fear feels tight. It's rigid, perfectionistic, and self-punishing. When you start paying attention to which one is driving you, you gain choice. The goal isn't to stop improving, but to improve from a place of wholeness, not lack. Practically, one of the most effective exercises for this is what I call the enough check. Before starting a self-improvement goal, whether it's journaling, learning a skill, or changing your diet, pause and ask, if I never got better at this, could I still accept myself? If the answer is no, then the improvement might be coming from self-rejection. That doesn't mean don't do it. It means adjust your intention. Turn I have to fix myself into I want to explore this. The emotional difference may seem small, but neurologically, it's massive. Studies in motivation science show that intrinsic goals, those driven by curiosity, mastery, or joy, activate the brain's reward circuitry in a way that sustains long-term effort. Extrinsic goals, driven by status, comparison, or guilt, activate stress pathways that burn you out. In other words, when you act from self-trust, growth becomes renewable energy. When you act from self-criticism, growth becomes a short-term performance. Another powerful shift is to replace optimization with integration. Optimization asks, how can I do more, faster, better? Integration asks, how can I bring more of myself into what I do? You stop treating life as a spreadsheet and start treating it as a conversation. For example, instead of asking, how do I eliminate procrastination? You might ask, what is my procrastination trying to tell me? Maybe it's fatigue. Maybe it's fear of failure. Maybe it's boredom. When you listen to those signals instead of suppressing them, you begin to understand yourself rather than control yourself. That understanding builds trust, and trust is the foundation of sustainable growth. Think of it like a relationship. If you constantly criticize a friend to make them better, they'll eventually withdraw. But if you understand their fears and support their potential, they'll naturally grow. Your mind works the same way. Here's another important idea. The opposite of self-improvement isn't stagnation, it's self-alignment. Self-alignment means your actions grow out of your values, not your insecurities. It's not about adding more habits, but about ensuring that what you already do serves who you truly are. For example, if you're reading productivity books because deep down you fear being seen as lazy, you're acting from misalignment. But if you're reading because you're genuinely curious about how humans use their time, that's alignment. The behavior looks identical from the outside, but the internal energy is completely different. In one case, you're running away from shame. In the other, you're moving toward understanding. When your actions come from alignment, growth becomes sustainable because it's connected to something deeper than external validation. Philosophers like Kierkegaard describe this as becoming a self before God. Not in a religious sense, but in the sense of becoming internally coherent. Your outer behavior reflects your inner truth. That coherence generates peace because there's no hidden audience to perform for. You're no longer split between the self that acts and the self that judges. To bring this idea down to earth, here's a simple 3-step practice to escape the self-improvement trap. Step 1. Name the voice. When you catch yourself saying, I should, pause and ask, whose voice is this? Is it your authentic desire, or is it an internalized critic trying to prove your worth? Often you'll realize that your motivational voice is actually an echo of social pressure, teachers, parents, influencers, or peers. Naming the voice weakens its grip because you separate your awareness from the automatic script. Step 2. Redefine success as alignment, not achievement. Before starting a new habit, ask, will this bring me closer to my values or just closer to approval? For instance, If one of your values is creativity, then journaling daily might support it. But if one of your values is connection, then calling a friend might serve it better than another self-help book. Success isn't about collecting more tools. It's about choosing fewer but truer ones. Step 3. Practice compassionate reflection instead of constant correction. Most people reflect on their day as a checklist of failures. I didn't wake up early enough, I ate badly, I didn't focus. But compassionate reflection sounds more like, what part of me was tired today? What was I really needing? Instead of punishing yourself into growth, you listen yourself into growth. Neuroscience shows that self-compassion activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's calming response, which actually makes behavioral change easier. In contrast, harsh self-criticism triggers the fight-or-flight system, which narrows perception and reduces learning. In other words, softness, not pressure, creates transformation. Another useful exercise is to schedule non-productive time. This sounds counterintuitive in a culture that worships efficiency, but it's vital. Give yourself an hour or even 15 minutes to do something that has zero improvement value. Watch the sky. Sit with your coffee. Let your mind wander. This small rebellion rewires your brain to associate stillness with safety instead of guilt. Over time, you'll notice that ideas start emerging naturally in those unoptimized spaces. That's the paradox. When you stop forcing growth, growth returns as creativity. You'll start realizing that the parts of you you've been trying to fix were often just parts that needed listening. The procrastinator might be protecting you from burnout. The perfectionist might be trying to ensure you feel safe from rejection. When you meet those parts with curiosity instead of control, they soften. You become less of a manager and more of a mediator within your own mind. This is where genuine self-development begins, not through mastery over yourself, but through relationship with yourself. Imagine your inner life as a garden. Self-improvement culture teaches you to prune endlessly, to cut, to shape, to perfect. But real growth happens in the soil. Integration means tending to the roots, nourishment, rest, patience, sunlight. You can't force a tree to grow faster by yelling at it, yet that's what we often do to ourselves through constant optimization. Real maturity is learning when to water, when to prune, and when to simply let be. Another hidden layer of the self-improvement trap is comparison. The modern world turns self-development into a spectator sport. Every achievement is posted, every transformation tracked, every habit gamified. It creates the illusion that personal growth is public performance. But the most meaningful progress is usually invisible. No one can see the day you stopped reacting in anger. No one can see the moment you forgave yourself. No one applauds the thought you didn't believe. Those inner victories don't trend, but they define who you become. So when you feel behind, remind yourself, growth isn't a race, it's a rhythm. Everyone's timeline is different because everyone's wounds are different. True progress is not measured by how fast you move, but by how honestly you understand where you are. At some point, the question shifts from, how can I be better, to, can I be here fully? That shift is where the pressure dissolves. You stop trying to reach yourself and realize you've been here all along. This doesn't mean you stop learning, striving, or building habits. It means you do those things from a foundation of acceptance, not anxiety. The best performers, thinkers, and creators in the world understand this. They know when to push and when to pause. Their growth isn't frantic, it's rhythmic like breathing. They inhale learning, exhale expression, then rest. You can adopt that rhythm too. Whenever you catch yourself spiraling into fixing mode, try this brief reflection. What if there's nothing wrong with me right now? Notice what happens in your body. Most people feel an immediate wave of relief followed by discomfort because peace feels unfamiliar. That's okay. It means you're rewiring your relationship with yourself. Over time, that discomfort turns into trust. The trust that you can grow without grinding, evolve without erasing yourself, and improve without losing your humanity. That's what real self-improvement looks like. Not constant motion, but conscious evolution. You are not a problem to solve. You are a process to understand. Every season of your life adds texture, not defects. Every setback is not a flaw in your design. It's feedback in your development. When you begin to see growth as cyclical rather than linear, you free yourself from the tyranny of better. You stop asking, am I enough yet? And start living as if you already are, which paradoxically is what allows true growth to flourish. So the next time you feel the urge to optimize every corner of your life, pause and ask yourself, what if the most radical act of self-improvement is to stop improving for a moment and simply be? Because that pause isn't failure, it's integration. It's the space where effort transforms into insight. And that's where peace hides, in the gap between who you think you should be and the quiet recognition of who you already are. If this message resonated with you and you want to keep exploring the psychology and philosophy of how the mind truly grows, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Mind Unlocked. Not to chase another piece of content, but to keep building your toolkit for better thinking. A toolkit that helps you understand your mind, not fight it. Because the real upgrade isn't becoming a new version of yourself. It's remembering that the one you are has always been enough.